So, okay, colleagues, I hope you can see the screen. So welcome again. I think my colleagues have just told me that everyone can see the screen. So welcome again to the webinars on the key findings, conclusions, and emerging recommendations for the rapid assessment of the GCF's request for proposal modality. My name is Andreas Reumann. I'm currently the head ad interim here at the Independent Evaluation Unit. Tonight, I'm also joined by my colleague, the evaluation specialist, Daisuke Horikoshi, who has been the task lead for this rapid assessment. And on today's agenda, we'd like to walk you through the background for this evaluation, the key findings and conclusions, and the emergent areas of recommendations. This 15 minutes presentation will be followed by a Q&A session where we hope to be able to engage with you, invite you, of course, for any additional feedback, in particular to the areas of recommendations or any other questions and additional questions that you may have. And so I will start off by sharing with you the schedule for this rapid assessment. And this schedule has been shared to all stakeholders through the approach paper earlier this year. And so far, we have completed the inception phase, the data collection and data analysis phase, and the report preparation phase. We're currently here at the second or third last point under this point, which is providing webinars to the board. And we hope in the next 2 weeks, we will be finalizing the report in time for the submission of the final report to B29. And of course, as said initially, we hope to present to you today the conclusions, as well as allude to some of the areas of recommendations and perhaps discuss potential areas of recommendations that would also help to guide and provide policy, initial policy guidance that may be considered by the board. To the background, here you see the evaluation team constituted by the IEU team, which is Daisuke, Elang, and Victoria, who are also here tonight on the call, as well as the external consultancy firm Pastel, represented by Claudio, Margarita, and Sarah. Also, Claudio and Margarita are here on the call tonight. On the next slide, this evaluation has obviously on its base as well a framework for this assessment, which is structured around the key areas and key questions. An excerpt of the evaluation metrics is provided here on the right-hand side with the key areas of relevance, implementation, value added, and as well learning. So the evaluation addresses two important aspects that we wanted to highlight here. One is the aspect of the RFP modality as a whole, and secondly, as well, the deployment of specific topics and therefore specific for pilot programs to address certain gaps. And we hope to address, we have addressed through this assessment the question of relevance, implementation, and value added, as well as lessons learned, and how these have been incorporated. There are, however, some areas that have been outside of the scope of this study, which is we've not assessed each of the pilot programs in greater detail, and we have not discussed potential and future topics for the RFP modality. Now, before I move over to Daisuke, who will give you a snapshot of the conclusions and areas of recommendations, I wanted to highlight to you the background for the RFP, so the 4 pilot programs. And here first, we look at the EDA, which is the pilot program for enhanced direct access. This is currently the only RFP that's still active. And the GCF board approved an initial allocation of 200 million for 10 pilots adopting enhanced direct access implementation modalities. So direct access entities nominated by the countries can submit proposals to the fund, which could include a variety of different stakeholders, institutions, entities, as well as non-governmental organizations operating at all kinds of levels, the national, the regional, as well as the subnational level within the countries. Secondly, the pilot program for MSMEs. Here, the MSME pilot program was established as part of the private sector facility and aims to support micro, small, and medium-sized enterprises in addressing mitigation and adaptation challenges. Again, at the moment, the approved projects that resulted from this RFP are, the number is very low, so we've only got 2 for the pilot program EDA and 3 approved projects that can be associated to the MSME. Thirdly, we've got also the program, the pilot program for mobilizing funds at scale. So the MFS seeks to identify innovative, high-impact projects and programs that mobilize private sector investments in climate change activities. Up to 500 million have been allocated by the GCF board for the Mobilizing Funds of Scale program. Since the issuance in 2017, the GCF Secretariat has received over 350 ideas for climate projects, and these ideas resulted in 5 approved projects. And last but not least, the GCF accepts also concept notes and funding proposals as part of the pilot program for REDD+ results-based payment. This pilot program follows a decision from October 2017, so the 18th board meeting, to pilot RPSP results-based payment, considering the Warsaw framework of REDD+ and other decisions by UNFCCC. This is currently budgeted, that the budget for this is currently fully committed and has 8 approved projects. So now I move over to my colleague Daisuke. Over to you. Daisuke, you're still on mute. Thanks.
Oh, sorry about that. Thank you, Andreas, for your introduction. Now I will walk you through our key findings from our data analysis. This table shows the status of 4 pilot programs as of March 2021 after P28. Only 2 out of the targeted 10 projects approved through EDA. Therefore, this pilot program has the low commitments amount, but demonstrates faster disbursement rates. MFS committed half of the allocated funds, but the progress of the disbursement is still low. MSME committed 60% of initial 100 million allocated amount for its first phase, and 43% of the committed amount has been disbursed so far. REDD+ result-based payment envelope has been fully committed with 46% of the fund disbursed, given that result-based payment are disbursed at the beginning of the projects. Next, please. Also, our additional portfolio analysis shows no particular focus or trend observed as a single modality in terms of accredited entities and sector and the project sizes. Those focuses comes from through the topic of each pilot program relevant to GCF mandate and the country needs. GCF had no financial set aside for RFP as a single modality, but there are indicative amounts for pilot programs. Next, please. When we compare the time taken by the project through RFP versus those through the regular window, there is no significant difference observed. The time taken of the project through RFP is similar to that of the regular funding proposal process. MFS projects even took longer to process the concept notes. All projects actually took at least 2 years. So we observe business model challenges here, while the approval process of REDD plus result-based payment project is shorter. This is because the approval process for the RFP project follows the same business model. MFS actually encounter accreditation challenges at the concept note stage. The entities who responded to MFS needed to be accredited to proceed with the next stage. The process of REDD plus result-based payment improved over time with the improved templates. Next, please. This table shows the key achievements and the weakness or gap of each pilot program identified by our portfolio analysis. When we look at the achievement of EDA contributed to attract direct access entity led project in SIDS and Africa, but only 2 projects approved so far, and no new entities reached GCF by this pilot programs. MFS attracted over 300 concept notes while mobilizing private actors, and 5 approved projects have higher co-financing ratio, which is one of the intents of this pilot program. But those projects are less focused on adaptation, and there is no pure adaptation project by the private sector in the current portfolio. The project through MSME targeted local MSME, the players on the ground effectively, but it is still unclear whether those projects contributed to innovation and new technology, which is one of the key criteria in the scorecard of this pilot program. The initial envelope of REDD plus result-based payment is fully committed. Implementation of result-based payments for REDD plus could not have been funded without RFP. The aggregate entity of 8 approved projects are all from UN organizations, and most of the projects are in Latin America. The initial envelope was insufficient to adequately fund this sector, considering the fact the initial envelope has been exhausted. Then these findings will lead us to the conclusions. We conclude RFPs are valid tools for the GCF to focus investment on specific topic identified as priority, as well as to raise awareness to the public on the interest of GCF on that topic. The topics and objectives of each RFP are relevant to the GCF mandate and the country needs. REDD plus result-based payment led to financing a portfolio of projects that could not have been funded by the GCF otherwise. So we could say GCF, the RFP is suitable to address portfolio gaps at the GCF. However, the objectives of RFP to help in filling gap in climate change financing landscape is not fully achieved. For example, the MFS doesn't necessarily contribute to attract scaled adaptation project by the private sector. The implementation of the RFPs did not succeed at overcoming the shortcomings of the GCF business model and did not make it faster and more accessible to national entities and the private sector. The RFPs did not provide an incentive to proponents regarding the project cycle or accreditation, and the number of projects approved for 3 out of 4 RFPs have been lower than expected. So the current RFP is not suitable to address business model challenges at GCF. Then I will walk you through the emerging areas of the recommendation from these conclusions. In terms of recommendations in the short term, there are many potential reasons for doing RFPs, including to engage and partner new types of stakeholders to generate proposal, to bring joint RFPs with technical partners, to foster innovation or promote scaling up of proven approaches or idea, to assess the appetite of beneficiaries for specific intervention or theme, to enhance the convening power of the GCF on particular topics, and to complement other funding, which include those outside the GCF. But GCF needs a comprehensive portfolio gap analysis according to its strategic goals mentioned in a USB. This will answer the question of what and why for RFP. For the long term, GCF needs to define systematic process and framework for RFPs that include providing tailored review process and clear operational guideline, improving their predictability and transparency that incentivize the participation of the right actors, providing measurement and performance framework for the entire modality, establishing coordinate team at the secretariat, and the review process through RFP should clarify, identify funding cap per project, type of support to proponent, selection criteria of the project, target proponent. This will answer the question how the RFP is implemented. Lastly, GCF strategically need to address portfolio gap according to allocation parameter and target identified in the USB, and the RFP should be linked to these targets. Also, GCF should improve the business model to increase the effectiveness of RFPs further. This answers strategic questions. This ends my presentation today, and I'm happy to answer your questions. Back to you, Andreas. Thank you.